So, Linda Daly Baker, you're back at Cheap Joe's.
Yes.
And,
One of my favorite places to be.
well, that's good to hear. And you're one of our favorite artists. How many times have you been to Cheap Joe's?
This is probably my fourth time.
Fourth time.
I want to say. Probably my fourth time.
And
I had to cancel one. I had an emergency. But I
that's
think
right.
it's my fourth
That
time.
was last year.
I think it was 2 years
Okay.
ago, yeah.
So, here we are at Cheap Joe's in Joe's office. And one of the first questions I always ask is, when did you discover you were an artist?
You know, that's an interesting question for me because I didn't have quite the same path that some people do. It's not like I, picked up a pencil at birth and,
Right.
and my parents always encouraged me or anything like that. Actually, my parents didn't want me to take art. They saw it as a little bit frivolous. They wanted me to take more college prep kind of things. So I didn't have any art in high school. And when I went to college and I was able to pick my own courses, what was interesting to me was that I picked all art. And so I became an art major in college. So that's when I knew that was the thing that interested me the most.
So, you became an artist? I mean, how did that happen, too? I mean,
Well, and it's never a smooth road like you think it might be. You think, well, you'll graduate and then you'll teach art and be an artist forever. But it doesn't happen that way. You get married. I've got something wrong with my throat here this week. I apologize.
it's the mountain.
The mountain air.
The mountain air.
So I ended up, my husband built racing engines. I got married and my husband built racing engines. And so we had a really active life in this really kind of bizarre world. And I was a big part of the business. But always in the back of my mind, I knew that what I really wanted to do was to paint. And I would paint on holidays or weekends or for special events or a little local show or something like that. But so one day, just sort of in the middle of nowhere, we were building a house and it had a 3-stall garage. And I said, so what's going to happen above the garage? And he said, well, rafters. And I said, could it be a room? And he said, sure, what do you want? And I said, I want an art studio. And at that time I had the guest bedroom like everybody gets.
Right.
So we built the studio, big studio. I'm so sorry. Should have brought a lozenge. We built the big studio, and then to his surprise, the next thing I said to him was that I would like to leave the family business and be a full-time artist. And he said to me, really? Because it hadn't been as big a part of my life. And I thought he'd say, we can't live without you in the business. You're too important in the business. It's not what he said. What he said to me is, well, what about your paycheck? Because I was earning an executive wage. I was running the business. And I said, well, I'm going to make money. He said, well, if you're going to make money, fine. And that was it. From that day, I left the racing engine business, and the next day I became a full-time artist, and I've never looked back.
So, you started selling paintings and making some money and doing workshops.
It doesn't really happen that way.
It doesn't happen that way.
No.
Okay.
It took me about a year to get up to speed. I took workshops. This is before they had videos. They had books back then.
Right.
I would put them under my pillow, see if I could absorb anything. But eventually I had to look at them and read them. So I did about a year of very intensive, made myself draw every day, and very intensive experimentation, and built up a body of work. And then I sought out galleries, and then I started selling. And I did something that ended up being kind of an interesting process. Because I worked a year and had a buildup of inventory, I went around and found 12 places, art centers, coffee shops, banks, churches, whatever would house an art show, an art exhibit. And I booked 12 shows in 12 months. And what this ended up doing was making me almost a household word in my area, because everything that was left over from one show, along with what I painted during the month, went to the next one. And so from that, I got invited to some very nice galleries, got invited by a couple agents to sell my work, and I was off and running.
So it's kind of like that old story, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice?
Practice,
So
practice,
you wanted
practice.
to get to Carnegie Hall.
I did.
You wanted to become an artist.
I did.
So you started practicing.
I
You
did.
started doing, how do you wrap your head around that? I mean, you've got to be very motivated to want to be an artist?
Well, I had thrown down the gauntlet.
Okay.
My family was depending upon me. We had 5 children that we were hoping to put through college. So I mean, we needed
Yeah.
finances. So I think because I threw down that challenge that way
Right.
and started sort of midlife almost, I had a long way to go and a short time to get there. And I think that's probably what
Okay.
motivated me.
And that's unique. So you practiced to be an artist. When did you start doing workshops? When did you start teaching?
Well, it's all sort of an interesting process. So you start painting some better paintings, you start selling well in the galleries, you start doing reproductions perhaps if that's what you want to do,
Right.
or outdoor shows, and you get a level of success. And before you know it, somebody's saying, can you come and show us how? And that's generally how workshops start. A group of friends say, can you come and show us how you're doing this? And you do. And then pretty soon somebody from across the state invites you. And then, of course, if you enter any shows and start winning a few awards, then maybe somebody on a national level starts to invite you.
Which leads me to my next question. I have realized that artists that come to Cheap Joe's, there's a lot of responsibility that you come in with before your students. So as you're dealing with your workshop and teaching your students, what do you want them to leave with at the end of the week? What's the most important thing in your mind that they leave with, that you impart to them?
Teaching is an interesting thing because when I went to college, I wanted to be a high school art teacher. And I ended up leaving college, missing a couple of my education classes, and then got married and never did teach high school. So late in life, here came these invitations, and it's like the universe spoke and said, you are going to get that chance to teach. So I've always taken this, this is very important to me that I teach. It's very important to me that I give back some of the things that I have learned. So when I walk into a workshop, what I'm hoping is that each student will leave that workshop with maybe a little bit more knowledge, a little bit of insight, a little more confidence, a little better understanding of the art world and sort of the echelons and how it works. But most importantly, I think what I am always trying to convey in my workshops is that this is for anybody that wants it. If you want it and if you work hard, you can have it. And a lot of people will say to me, well, I'm not a good artist, or I paint, but I'm not very good at it. And I would like to say to them, it's choices. If you choose it, and if you work hard at it, it's there for everybody.
So how would you describe your art? I mean, if someone were to ask you that question,
My art is absolutely chaotic. I choose the most bizarre things to paint that anybody would ever pick. I have never, in the beginning, I was painting for galleries, so I was painting for sales. So I was trying to find a nice scene or a nice wicker chair on a porch that everybody wanted to sit in. And when I moved beyond the gallery sales, more into the competition world and the world of teaching, all subjects became possible for me. So I found beauty in a gray basket of clothespins and turned them into a subject matter. I found a great story in a pile of keys in a bowl and painted them. So I find my stories in sort of the unexpected. I think I paint the unexpected.
you like bicycles.
I love bicycles.
So I think Mike has a bicycle painting in his office.
He does.
Right.
And I think the wonderful thing about bicycles is that they're going somewhere. They're always going somewhere. They've been somewhere. They have a lot of history. They have a lot of future, and they make all things possible.
So you're Charleston, South Carolina.
I
That's
am.
where you live. So
I am.
does that influence your art being in that area? I mean, it's hot. It's the South. It's Charleston.
It's Charleston. It has all of this history and flavor and every street you walk down has a story. I love that part. I haven't been very influenced by Charleston yet because I'm not there often enough. Since I've moved to Charleston, which is about 3 years ago, I've taught maybe nearly 20 workshops a year. So I'm not at home very much. I came from Michigan, and I was very influenced by Michigan. But I'm looking forward to being influenced by Charleston. I'm looking forward to being home a little more and more time in the studio and more time to find new subjects.
I grew up in Fort Huron.
Oh my gosh, okay.
So what part of Michigan?
The western side of Michigan, right on Lake Michigan.
Kalamazoo?
Grand
or-
Haven.
Grand Haven, okay.
Mhm,
I've
Spring
been
Lake.
there.
Yeah.
So, Hart, Michigan, the asparagus capital of the
Yes,
world.
yes, there you
Isn't
go.
that great?
Yeah.
So you're finding stories, and your paintings are stories in a sense.
They are.
I mean, so people look at them, and that's what you're. So, who have been your influences? What artists have been your influences? And if you could be any artist, living or dead, who would you be? So,
Oh my gosh. So, in the classic, realm, I was very moved by Monet's work and the Impressionism, and even though I paint very realistic, and people tend to think that maybe I paint tight and close, when you get near my work, you realize it goes almost to the point of abstraction, and the closer you get to it, the less detailed it appears. I paint quite complex subject matter, so I was very influenced by Monet in the beginning. Probably my all-time favorite artist in the world is Andrew Wyeth.
Okay.
I love his use of contrast. I love the lack of color. I love the emotion that he gets in his work. So very influenced by Andrew Wyeth. And if I could be anybody today, I suppose maybe I'd like to be me.
Yeah.
I'm the only one that's not taken. I always say, why don't you be yourself? You're the only one that's not taken. But of the people that are out there today, I think that Joseph Zubachek, or whatever, however you pronounce his name, from Australia, is probably one of the best plein air painters in the world today. I think his work is extraordinary. I love Dean Mitchell's work. I think it's rich. I like people that do all kinds of work. I love Ted Nuttall's freshness. I love Alex Powers' attitude and angst that he gets in his work. There's so many artists that I think are just incredible in today's world.
So, I'm out here watching this, reading this. Why would I want to take a Linda Daly Baker workshop?
Perhaps I've sort of been referred to on occasion as like the art whisperer.
Okay.
And I think my strength in teaching started out with teaching a technique or a process.
Right.
But I think my teaching has evolved into helping an artist to move to their next level.
Okay.
Looking at their work and helping them to find more of what they want to say in their work, and what influences they might want to take a look at to find a more perfected them.
Right.
So I think today, as an instructor, what I bring to the table is that I not only let you be you, I encourage you to be the best you that you can be. And I think so that's important to me in my teaching.
Well, that's an interesting concept, too. You're looking for stories to tell. You're creating art because you have something to say.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an interesting perspective.
Everybody's got a story. And if you sit down and take the time to listen, everybody's story is interesting. It's always convoluted. There's some wonderful with some tragedy, because none of us escape this great thing called life.
Right.
And I think that if we can have the courage to bring our life and our life experience and our story into our paintings, I think it takes courage. I think it takes almost a shift in your mind that allows you to put yourself into that painting. So almost every instructor or every juror or every judge says, well, I'm looking for a painting where I see the artist in the work. And people say, what does that mean? And it means different things to different people. But when you completely let yourself go in this whole realm of art, when you don't think about sales or competition or being the best or will I embarrass myself, when you completely let all of that go and it's just you and the paper and the brush, I think that's when you find you in the painting. And I think it doesn't matter what subject you choose. I think you can be in that painting any subject, because you're going to choose things that interest you or intrigue you
Right.
for some reason. I'm very intrigued by the way light dances across the surface of things, so my subjects always include a lot of light. But I also think there's a lot of hope in light, and so
Right. Light is life. in a
light is
sense.
light, yes.
So in closing, I always ask this question and get varied answers. Do you have a favorite story about Cheap Joe's or Cheap Joe himself, or something that is light and airy, or what have you enjoyed about Cheap Joe's?
I do have a favorite story about Joe, and it involves the first time I met him.
Okay.
And it's not a light and happy story for me, but I went to a Stretching Boundaries in Ohio years and years ago with about 14 friends in a big van or whatever, and I signed up for a critique, and the famous Mr. Ed Betts was going to be critiquing work. And there were about 200 people in the auditorium, and they brought the paintings across the stage, and he was making comments on them. As the day went on, he was getting a little less cheerful about his comments, a little more pointed, and I was thinking as I sat there, maybe this is going to hurt a little when mine comes across the stage. As the day went on and he was getting very tired, I thought, this is going to be painful. So finally, it turned out that I was the last person, and they brought my paintings across the stage, and I painted a couple very nice florals, nicely framed, nicely matted, and he looked at them and he said, if this is what you're going to do with your talent, I would burn my brushes. And he walked off the stage. And of course, I was near tears, and I was embarrassed. And for the next 2 days, everybody said, "Are you the?" Yeah, I'm the one. Burn your brushes, or whatever. And I was about ready to go home, curl up in the fetal position, and never paint again. It was what I was thinking. Just get me out of here, And the last night of the Stretching Boundaries event, they had a banquet, and that night Joe did his little
Van Gogh?
Van Gogh event that he does. And that was the first time I met Joe, and the first time I saw him perform. And he did this Van Gogh. And when he told the story of Van Gogh through the eyes of Theo, it changed me. And I thought, I'm not going to burn my brushes. I'm going to go home and figure out how to be an artist. So Joe was very pivotal. Meeting Joe was very pivotal to me at a time when I had a little bit of a absolute low in my career. And I think there are moments that change our lives, that we either give it up and don't put the effort into it, or we dig our feet in and say, you know what, this is not going to beat me. I'm going to figure this out.
Right.
And so a little bit of an end to that story is, so I went home, pouted for a bit, and then looked around and thought, what could I paint that would be more intriguing to him? And so my husband was either putting out or putting away lawn furniture, but anyway, power washing or whatever. It was all piled up on the side of our house. And I said, don't touch it. And I sketched it and I photographed it, and I painted this painting of the piled up lawn furniture. And I thought, I'm going to enter that in something. I'm just going to try. And I looked in the magazine and entered it, and it turned out the juror was Ed Betts. And he put that painting in the exhibit and gave it an award. And so I wrote him a letter.
Wow.
And I said, a couple months ago you told me to burn my brushes, and I said that was probably good advice at the time, but I didn't. And I said I should thank you for, popping me out of my comfort zone or whatever and facing reality. But at the end of the letter, I told him, I said that I thought his bedside manner could use some improvement. And to my surprise, the Ed Betts wrote me a personal letter back, a handwritten letter, and he said, I see art every day, all day long. And he said, I'm old and I'm tired, don't waste my time. He said, you finally put something before my eyes that was worthy of my notice. So that was a huge event in my life, life-changing event, and Joe was right in the middle of it.
Well, that's an incredible story. It really is. And thank you for chatting today. You've been a good subject, so to speak.
A good subject.
I think you think quickly on your feet, and we could talk for a couple of days. I'm
Oh
sure
my gosh.
we'll have to end it right here, and so you can get back to your workshop.
Well, thank you for the opportunity of being able to teach here at Joe's and hopefully change somebody's life for the better. I have never told anybody to burn their brushes. I thought to myself,
Yeah.
if I ever get the opportunity to influence artists, I will do it with love and kindness, because I think there are more than one ways to get the message. So I think this is a great venue and a great opportunity for artists. And I can tell you, you place those restrooms just in the right place, because
Right.
every time I go to the restroom, I come back with a new bag of
A
goodies.
new bag of goodies, right? That's called marketing.
That's called marketing 101, yes.
Linda, thank you.
Thank you.